And welcome everyone. Wow, LifeWave Warriors, you're here on a Saturday. That is really impressive. I see some friendly faces, and so it's good to see everybody. And I'm with all of you. Let's get life back to normal. This has certainly been a crazy year, but it has been a year that has been filled with opportunity. In 2019, our sales were nearly triple of 2018 because of X39. And this year, even with COVID-19, sales are way more than double of what they were last year. And this happened even though we had our slowdown in the Philippines, we got delayed in the opening of Malaysia, got delayed in Thailand. Those were all markets that were gonna come online this year that got pretty significantly delayed, but now fortunately things are starting to get back to normal. So our international business expands. Well, anyway, let's get into the fun part. Let's get into the science, and then we can talk about some of the business things a little bit later. Because first, we have to be able to offer products and technology that are exclusive, that you can't find anyplace else, and are going to offer benefits that you can't find anyplace else as well. And at the end of the day, the reason why we're all here is that we want to improve the lives of others. So when we first started as a company, the mission statement was all about improving quality of life. And the first products, as I know Roy will remember because he was here then, and many of you actually were here then, longtime LifeWave members. It was about improving energy, pain relief, and improving the quality of sleep. And then in 2006, we moved towards anti-aging, and we began to release products like glutathione, Eon, carnosine, which could help improve quality of life again, but do this by improving immune function, detoxification, helping to manage oxidative and inflammatory stress, and improve things like athletic performance and the function of the heart. So anti-aging effects. Now, where this changed is 12 years ago now, we began a research project looking at what was going to be the future. And we came to the conclusion that it had to do with stem cells and regenerative science. So we began to invest in this area. We spent over $4 million looking at how we could bring a product to market that was going to augment the way our stem cells work. And we're going to be getting into that in quite a bit of detail today. But where this landed us, of course, with our product that we released is X39, and we can activate the stem cells in the body with light. Now, I'll give you a little bit of spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear this, you could turn your speaker off now. But what I will share with you is that one of the good things that has come out of this past year is I've gotten much more opportunity to spend time and energy in research. And what I can tell you is that X39 is the first product that's being released for activating stem cells in the body. Our research has produced very interesting channels in which we're looking at other stem cell applications. I'm not going to give it away on this call tonight, but what I will tell you is that X39 is the first product in a line of products for activating stem cells. So when you think of X39, you can think of what we did with YAGE. We came out with glutathione first and then followed it up with carnosine and Eon. The stem cell story for us is not over. Well, anyway, let's get into X39 before we leap ahead here, and I'll share my screen. And the big thing about this, of course, with X39 is that it is making stem cell technology affordable. And this is so important because if you were to go for an injection of stem cells today, they're quite expensive, $3,500, $5,000, and it's generally not regulated by the FDA. The more advanced stem cell therapies are still not approved by the FDA in most countries around the world. There's a number of significant challenges. Sometimes the stem cells that are injected can damage healthy tissue and end up with permanent damage. And also injecting stem cells into the body doesn't always work. So we want to look at how can we provide a stem cell technology that's efficacious, it's not going to cause any harm, and it's affordable. So first, let's take a look at the problem. And we did quite a bit of research on this, not only in San Diego, but in Ireland at the National University of Ireland in Galway. And essentially, the first thing that you find out when you do research into stem cells is that stem cells are going to age with the rest of the body. Now, what are stem cells? Okay, stem cells are the universal cell, and stem cells become every other cell in the body. As we age, the stem cells begin to slow down in their ability to repair and make new cells. And this is important. Anybody that's, let's say, over the age of 60 or 70 is very familiar with the concept that when you get injured, you don't heal as quickly. So this is because the stem cells are not functioning anymore like younger, healthier cells. And even worse, eventually, let's say it's around age 75, in practical terms, there's no more stem cells. So this is why when people get over the age of 75, you can see they age very rapidly between, let's say, 75 and 85 or 90. And this has quite a bit to do with the stem cells. And there's obviously other things that are going on. So we've already kind of covered this. Stem cell injections, they're expensive, there's risks, they don't always work, and they're not really regulated or approved in most countries. So what can we do? What kind of technology can we offer to make stem cell science a reality and make it available to everyone? So I think this is relatively important. We have now secured over 70 patents. I think it's over 80 now. We have to update this. We just received a patent in Hong Kong this week. That's one of our new ones. And these are all in the field of regenerative medicine, stem cell science. So we've invested quite a bit of money and time into investigating this field. And there's quite a bit of interesting information that's come out of this. But let's go back to the beginning. One of the first things that we were doing was working at the Regenerative Medicine Institute at the National University of Ireland in Galway. This is on the west coast of Ireland, where we have one of our offices. I was very fortunate to meet Dr. Tim O'Brien, who is a world authority in the field of stem cell science. His specialty is diabetes and diabetic neuropathy. I made a presentation to him, and based on that presentation, he agreed to take on the project. We also received funding from Scientific Foundation Ireland. And bear in mind that Remedy is in the top 2% of research centers globally in the field of stem cells. So National University of Ireland and the Regenerative Medicine Institute, you'll find all major companies that are working there. So what did we do? Well, before we started looking at using patches as a means to activate the stem cells, we were using external devices. And this is one of the devices that I invented. It produces a novel electromagnetic field with which we have received patents on. And this device is capable of activating stem cells in the body. We have tested this technology in our labs in what's called in vitro work. We tested the technology in animals, and we've also tested it in human beings. So we'll talk about that. Now, here is what we would refer to as a standard rabbit model. We did this study at NUIG. And what you do is induce a diabetic ulceration in the ear of the rabbit. Once the rabbit has a wound, you begin treatment. And you have a control group and you have a test group. And then after 7 days, you see and look and see if there's any difference. Now, why are we interested in studying this? Well, diabetes is affecting over 400 million people globally. And one of the very, very significant problems is that when people develop diabetes, they're at risk for developing peripheral neuropathy. So what this means is that when you have high blood sugar levels, this will in turn damage nerves in the feet. And when the nerves become damaged, it impairs circulation. And when circulation becomes reduced, it's very painful. And in advanced stages, it can lead to open wounds. And in about 15 to 20% of those cases, it results in amputation. So this is very serious. It affects a huge number of people, and there is currently no type of drug or medical procedure that can cure a diabetic ulceration. So we want to look and see, is there anything that we can do with energy technology and stem cell technology to heal these wounds? And the answer is yes. So in this very first study, we learned some extremely important things. First, we learned that it was possible to activate the stem cells in the body with energy and accelerate the rate of wound healing. So that was really exciting. But I would say maybe surprisingly, in a good way, the rate of healing was equivalent to applying stem cells to the injury. So this was the first time in our studies where we discovered that you do not have to inject stem cells in the body. You can activate them with energy and produce a similar outcome. So this is exciting because all human beings, we have stem cells. And if we can get those cells to function better, then we can avoid having to inject stem cells with all of their associated costs and risks. Now, in San Diego, where we have our research lab, we work with something called a planaria. It is a flatworm. And this is a standard stem cell model. And when you cut off the head or the tail of the planaria, it's going to regenerate in about 17 days. And what's significant about this is that the entire genome of the planaria is very well mapped and understood, which means that if we are able to enhance the regenerative capacity of the worm, we can understand how that's happening, and then we may be able to figure out how can we apply that to human beings. So one of the top researchers in planaria is actually in San Diego, and one of the goals is to try to figure out how can you get the planaria to regenerate in 15 days. In the stem cell world, that would be considered an achievement. We've been able to, with this technology, regenerate planaria in 8 days. And in the most sophisticated version of what we did and patented, we were able to regenerate the head of a planaria in less than 1 day. Now, by the way, what this means for human beings is that, let's say that you had someone that they were in an automobile accident, and you had this technology in a hospital. You put this technology into the emergency room, and this means that we can begin to close wounds within minutes of application. We're able actually in the planaria to get wound closure within about 10 to 15 minutes. So this is something that we would like to be able to do someday. It's obviously not ready for use in human beings, but fortunately we do have technology that is available today. Okay, now this technology is very expensive. It hasn't been approved yet, and it's got to be used in a hospital or clinic and be utilized by a technician. So this doesn't really fit our mission statement of being able to make stem cell technology available to everyone. So what do we do? Well, this is where X39 comes in. We're going to stimulate the body with electromagnetic energy, but we're going to do it with light instead. Now, light therapy has been around actually for thousands of years. It was even used by the ancient Greeks. It was used in India. And a Danish scientist back over 100 years ago now really began to formulate the science behind what today we would think of as light therapy. And actually, it hasn't really been known until the past 10 years how light therapy works. It's kind of extraordinary when you consider that light therapy has been around for thousands of years, but really the biochemical mechanisms of light therapy have only been understood for about 10 years. So today we understand when you stimulate skin with light, exactly what biochemical changes are occurring. And this is a really good thing, because when you can understand the biochemistry, that means now we can look for ways that we can design products that are going to have very specific beneficial effects. Okay, so with LifeWave technology, what do? You apply a patch anywhere on the body. Now, what people find very surprising is that this is a systemic effect. In other words, you can apply a patch behind the neck, yet an injury on the toe is going to heal. And this is because the human body is holistic. The communication systems that we have, the nervous system, the acupuncture meridians, you can think of this like electrical wiring and fiber optic cables. So you stimulate the body in one place and the signal travels throughout the body. If that weren't true, then your brain couldn't communicate with the rest of your body. I bet if you think about wiggling your toes or moving your foot, you can do it, right? Well, we know we're originating that electrical impulse up in the brain, and that signal travels through the body very, very quickly. So you can think of this in a similar way. We are going to stimulate one area of the body with a patch, let's say the back of the neck, but we can create a biochemical change throughout the body. That's a simple way of explaining it. There's a lot more going on. Now, what happens in these patches? Well, the patches contain organic materials. They're natural materials. They're crystals that are composed of things like water, oxygen, amino acids, sugars. And I found a way to process them in a very specific way so they would reflect specific wavelengths of light when activated by body heat. So in other words, you don't need a laser, you don't need a lamp. Your body is the power source. As long as you have body heat, your body heat is going to activate the patch. The patch is going to reflect light and stimulate the skin and begin to cause changes. So here we go. You have a patch on the back of the neck. It stimulates the skin with light. And this is a process, for those of you that want to know, called photobiomodulation. It's just a technical term, which means that we're going to use light to create chemical changes within the body. Simple way of thinking about this is we go in the sun, and sunlight will cause our body to make vitamin D. right? That's something that we're all familiar with. If you're having a problem sleeping at night, it could be because there's too much light in your room. In order for melatonin to be made, you got to be in the absence of light. So if you're having a problem sleeping, one of the things you should look at is the environment that you're sleeping in. Is there too much light? That can keep you awake and inhibit melatonin. All right, so what are we going to do with X39? How is stimulating the skin with light going to activate the stem cells? Well, this product has been designed to elevate a peptide called GHK-Cu, or simply copper peptide. Now, a peptide is a complex of amino acids, and so when you're eating food and the food has protein, the protein is broken down into amino acids, and those amino acids are used to form things like peptides in the body. As we age, like a lot of things, the amount of copper peptide in your body begins to decrease. And this parallels the activity of your stem cells. So by the age 60, the stem cell activity in your body is down about 60 to 80%. I know that's it's a really depressing thought. Now, not coincidentally, the levels of copper peptide are also down 60 to 80%. So in other words, we elevate copper peptide, we can have an effect on the stem cells. So let's take a look at that. Now, one thing that's really important to bring up is the person that discovered copper peptide is Lauren Picard. I've been in communication with Dr. Picard, an amazing scientist. He really deserves a Nobel Prize for this discovery. And he's put over 45 years of his life into researching the benefits of copper peptide. So this is going to tell you that Dr. Picard is certainly very convinced that copper peptide has some extraordinary benefits. Now, if you had a wish list of what you could do with the stem cells in your body as they age, copper peptide would really fit into every single thing you would want. What does that mean? Well, when we elevate copper peptide, one of its properties is that it is able to modulate the information in your genes. Essentially, copper peptide will reset several thousand genes back to a younger, healthier state. It's about 1/3 of your information database that determines who you are as an individual. So about 1/3 of those genes go back to being youthful. That is really great information. So that means the stem cells are going to behave like younger, healthier cells. Now, another thing that copper peptide will do is it will mobilize the stem cells. We refer to it as activate, but it's really the same thing. In technical terms, copper peptide activates the p63 gene, and this is responsible for stem cell mobilization. But the benefit is that you have an injury and you've got to get stem cells over to that injury. You elevate copper peptide, now you can activate the genes that are associated with mobilization, and now you can get those stem cells to where they're needed. There's one other property too of copper peptide. If we have an injury, we want as many stem cells as possible to get involved in repairing that injury. Well, when you elevate copper peptide in the skin, it will convert the stem cells in your skin over to pluripotent stem cells, the universal stem cells. And then those stem cells can go out into the blood, and then they can travel to where they are needed. So this is really exciting information, because now what this means is with this one peptide, this one nutrient, we can get the stem cells to function like more younger cells. we can get them to where they're needed, and we can get more of them. So that's pretty powerful stuff. Now, you might be wondering, okay, David, that sounds really good, but how do we actually know that the patch elevates copper peptide? Well, I'm glad you asked. Dr. Caitlin Connor, who is the daughter of Dr. Melinda Connor, is one of the doctors that we work with in our research. She may be working, by the way, at Harvard very soon. I was just in touch with her last week. She's looking at going into a research program at Harvard. And she was one of 20,000 scientists that was accepted into a research program at Oxford. So she's really a bright young woman. And so we put together a research program. This is the first study, but we've done 2 others now, actually 3 others, where we have determined that the X39 patch does elevate the peptide GHK and GHK-Cu. This first study was with 10 people, but we followed this up with a 50-person double-blind study. Now, because levels of copper peptide are down 60 to 80%, by the time you get into your 60s, we chose to use people that were over the age of 60. We also want to find out, can we get an effect very rapidly? So what happens the first 24 hours of wearing X39? What happens after the first week? And when you look at the results that we were able to achieve, just within the first day, we saw increases in copper peptide. We saw increases actually in GHK to incredible statistical significance, and then within the first week as well. So we have multiple studies now, 3 studies showing, yes, you wear X39, it elevates copper peptide. Okay, now, where do we go from there? What other effects have we seen? And by the way, some of our studies, we have 9 clinical studies now on X39. Some of those are out for publishing. Some of those are just underway, but some of them are posted on our website. Here's a study where we did a pilot study, then a double blind, on looking at what happens to the metabolism when you wear X39. So this was a 50-person double-blind study, people over the age of 63, over the age of 60 rather, and we want to look at, again, what happens the first 24 hours, what happens the first 7 days. By the way, we have done a 6-month study that we completed on X39. We also are in 9 months now of a 12-month study. And what we find is that as you use X39, the benefits continue to accumulate. So we're really excited about that finding. Well, what happens? Well, first, X39 increases the rate at which we use amino acids. Now, this is important because amino acids form peptides and they form proteins. So basically what this shows, and what we discovered by looking at amino acids that were synthesized like tryptophan and leucine, the branch chain amino acids, is that when you use X39, muscle protein synthesis increases. So any of you that are athletes and you want to repair more quickly, X39 is going to help you. Or if you have an injury, you have to form new proteins in order to repair the injury. X39 we have shown does that. We also found, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail momentarily, X39 has a very pronounced effect on cognition, improving the coherence in the brain, short-term, mid-term memory, even the speed at which your brain processes information improves with X39. We saw to statistical significance that people that had high blood pressure saw a reduction in blood pressure with X39. We saw that the heart went into a state of relaxation within the first week. Sleep improves. This seems rather unusual, right? why would a product that improves your overall energy and vitality and increase the metabolism, why would it also improve sleep? That seems rather unusual. Well, when we measured this, we did this through urine analysis and bioelectrical tests, is that there's an increase in GABA in the brain. GABA is used to support levels and trigger increases in melatonin, but GABA also regulates another chemical in the brain called BDNF, and BDNF regulates stem cell activity. So in other words, X39, because it's mobilizing stem cells in the brain, it has an effect on the control system, which is GABA, and GABA in turn helps you sleep. Okay, we found overall within the first 24 hours that people are noticing an improvement in their energy. And by day 7, we saw overall improvements in vitality. We use clinically relevant questionnaires in order to collect this data. And even breathing improved with X39. Dr. Gaetan Chevalier is another researcher that we work with. He's located in Carlsbad, California. And prior to doing the work that he's doing now, he was involved in fusion research at UCLA. He's an expert in laser spectroscopy. One of the first studies that we did with Dr. Chevalier was studying light emission from the human body and how that changes over time. And that's actually very important. This has to do with the coherence of the cell. And we found with our energy patches that we could improve the coherence of the cell and produce an anti-aging effect. Anyway, in this study, this was our first pilot study, and we've since moved to a double-blind study. We wanted to look at, in people over the age of 50, what happens in the brain when wearing X39. And here we see session 1 is at baseline, session 2 is at 3 weeks, and session 3 is at 6 weeks. And this is in a woman that is 77 years old. Now that's pretty important, because by that age, we're not going to see really any, virtually any stem cell activity throughout the body, including the brain. And the changes in color are essentially a shift towards coherence. Coherence refers to the way different regions of the brain communicate with one another. So in order to be in a state of optimum health, everything in your body has to be communicating properly. That's probably pretty obvious. And so we see that the brain moves towards a shift in coherence in the first 3 weeks here. Now, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. This is really important. Many people, 85%, will start to see statistically significant changes within the first 7 days. But some people require a little bit longer. So this is why people should use the product for at least a month before they determine whether or not it's for them. In this particular case, this is a man 67 years old. He begins to see a subtle shift after 3 weeks, but of course, after 6 weeks, it's highly noticeable. And I'll also point out, in this pilot study, all 12 of the participants achieved dramatic results. Now, what happens out in the real world? What are some of the things that we see with X39? Well, one of the things that stem cells do really well is wound healing. And here is a picture of a gentleman in Italy that had open heart surgery. We introduced X39 as a pre-launch in July of 2018. And you can see, even though the scar had been there for a year, there was a dramatic change in the appearance of the scar after 30 days. Now here's a more recent scar from a surgery. X39 is applied, dramatic reduction in only 2 weeks. Now, you can apply X39 really anywhere. In our studies, people are using it either behind the neck or below the belly button. But if you wanted to apply it right at the area of the injury, you could certainly do that. Now, this young man, he is the son of one of our distributors in France, and he had a job interview that was coming up, got in this accident, and you can see within 5 days, dramatic improvement. This gentleman nearly lost his hand in a car accident, and you can see within 2 months, dramatic improvement. This was a young boy, 9 years old, in Denmark. He caught his finger in a door. The tip of the finger was severed off. They rushed him to the hospital, and the doctor said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. And the father begged him to reattach the fingertip. The doctor said, well, I can do that, but it's going to die. And they applied it anyway, and you could see it turn black. So they applied X39, and only 2 months later, he regained the use of his finger. Doctor was absolutely amazed and said, hey, you know, this is something I didn't think was going to happen. And even still, you wouldn't expect to see a result like this after 9 months. Now, this is Mandy down in Australia, who I understand from Michael Serveus, she's become the poster girl for LifeWave in Australia. If you saw a picture of her today, actually, I have a picture of her. She looks like a teenager. I'm going to pull that picture up, actually. It's extraordinary. But here she is. She started out just wanting to use X39 for overall health. After 6 weeks, she had a tightening of the skin. She was delighted with her results. And you can see after a year, a really dramatic change compared to day one. Now, the next one up was our very first, I'll call it youth renewal testimonial. This woman is 93. I know many of you have seen this before. She was suffering with quite a few health challenges that we won't mention. Her daughter is a LifeWave distributor. And she gave X39 to her mom, just hoping that it would improve her health. And everybody was really shocked at the transformation that she went through in only 2 months. So that's what Mandy looks like today. Pretty extraordinary result. I know that she is thrilled. And by the way, if you go to the science section of the website, you can see references to our patents, clinical studies, and then featured research. We put some X39 research right at the top. We do have 9 clinical studies because of COVID. There have been so many delays. We have one study in particular that's out. We're supposed to hear any day now. It is a very prominent journal in our industry. And we're hoping that we can make an announcement that they're going to accept the study and we'll get it published in this journal. So we're holding on that. But as we get the studies published, of course, we will post them. All right, so Mitzi, I think with that, if we want to go to a number of questions, I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, thank you so much, David.
Oh, my pleasure.
So much to learn and so exciting to be able to apply it. And the good thing is, if you know how to put a Band-Aid on, you can put in a patch.
Absolutely.
Let's start with this. And I've answered most in the chat there, except for a couple. All right. So David, we know glutathione stimulates glutathione production. All I remember with Eon is the royal jelly.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
We know X39 is activates the copper peptide. So what do the other patches activate or stimulate?
Okay. So if we start at the beginning, we would talk about Energy Enhancer, which is the first product. And so Energy Enhancer turns on beta oxidation, which is fat burning. And this is important because for other than the obvious reasons, is that if we want to have natural energy as we age, we begin to shift away from fatty acid metabolism and we go towards sugar metabolism. And this is dangerous on a number of different levels. So by the time most people are age 50, not LifeWave users, people begin to experience what's called mitochondrial dysfunction, meaning that the cells are not producing as much energy as they did when people were in their youth. And this is really, really devastating, because you could even describe aging as this is one of the consequences, is that the cells don't produce as much energy. So the very first product was designed to be anti-aging in the sense that it elevates fat burning. IceWave works on essentially the same principle. Silent Nights is going to elevate melatonin. Of course, you talked about glutathione, carnosine, which are both self-evident. SP6 is going to regulate sugar metabolism in the body. And Eon, I generally don't like to talk about that peptide publicly, because that peptide is associated, if I were to tell you what the peptide is and you were to Google it, the first thing that would come up is that it's used in cancer therapy. And so we don't want to make any claims about that. So that's why we don't talk about it. But this was actually a real challenge. I was working with a very well-known scientist when I developed Eon, and we were looking at a number of interesting applications for it. And Dr. Holtuanger and I, when we were looking, we had 9 clinical studies we completed on Eon. We were trying to figure out, what do we tell people that this does? Because the results were so good, we didn't want to make any medical claims. And he and I, we were sitting at a restaurant in Missouri, having dinner, talking about this. And Dr. Holtwanger said, "Why don't we tell people it's for stress management?" And I thought, I don't know. I said, maybe. I think we could. That could work if we explained it properly. So that's really how this came about. But on the one hand, stress management is obviously really important, but it goes so much further than that. When you look at different species like mollusks, lobsters, that live an extraordinary long period of time. There's been mollusks that have been found to live over 500 years old. And all of these species that live a very, very long time, they do it by completely controlling inflammatory stress and oxidative stress. So one of the real secrets of longevity, biblical longevity, the human beings being able to live hundreds of years old, like in the Old Testament in the Bible, is the energy in the cell never declines. We got the same level of energy as we do in our youth. The repair systems all work, and the cells never become damaged by oxidative or inflammatory stress. And what gets me so excited about this is that there's already living creatures on the planet that have already figured out how to do it. And we just have to figure out how they're doing it.
Oh, I know you. We're getting those benefits. We don't need to know the whole details. I'm just glad to have it.
All right, good. I'm glad you didn't ask.
So I know in the beginning we were some of our trainings involved acupuncture, and we had acupuncture without the needle. So the number one thing the question was, are all the patches can be considered acupuncture without the needles, or is it just energy? So in the hands of someone who has knowledge or training, like an acupuncturist, would that be a powerful tool for them, for their clients to go home?
Yeah, most definitely. So we made a marketing decision a number of years ago to get away from describing the patches as being used with acupuncture And we really wanted to get more towards the broad consumer application and just simply describe this as, hey, you put a patch on and it works, and keep it very simple. And that strategy has worked incredibly well for the business building. But to answer your question, yes, in the American system of acupuncture, there's 385 points. However, if you look at an acupuncture chart in China, and which I've seen them, there are about 1,400 acupuncture points on the body. So that means just about anywhere on your body, you're going to find an acupuncture point. The 385 are the most common, but the acupuncture meridian system is fairly complex. I actually had a conversation this week with a medical doctor about acupuncture specifically, and there have been a number of new clinical studies that have come out that have actually found, through very high resolution microscopy, they found the acupuncture meridian, which are these collagen fibers that run throughout the body and connect the organs to points on the surface of the skin. So one of the ways that you can think about this is that the acupuncture system is like the fiber optic cables in the body, and the nervous system is like the electrical wiring. So human body is very clever. We have a number of different communication systems. So you take one of our patches and you put it virtually anywhere on the body, and it's going to be stimulating not only the nerve clusters on the skin, but the acupuncture points as well.
All right, thank you. So this is why everyone remember X39, the brochure would let you know that you can apply it in the back of the neck or below the belly button, but it can be applied anywhere, right? Okay. Okay, David. So with what's going on right now, what would you recommend to keep stress and anxiety at bay and to improve mood?
Thought you were going to ask me something different.
Oh, you can answer that question too.
I'm trying to stay out of trouble, Mitzi. You're not helping. I thought the question you were going to ask me was about COVID-19. What should people do to protect themselves from COVID-19?
Yeah, yes, that's one of the questions coming up. What would you say to that?
I'd say I know more than I should say. Let me see. What do I want to say about that? We being recorded? Yeah, we're being recorded, so I got to be really careful.
We can refer them to the recordings you've done before.
Yeah. Well, let's see. How do I want to respond to this?
Just a little bit, David. Do you know there are almost 270 people here on a Saturday?
I know. And I am very appreciative of that, by the way. Yeah, I would say I would articulate it this way, is that we did, in fact, perform a study on a patch at a hospital in the United States with patients that have COVID-19. And the outcome that we achieved, and this was a very small pilot study, was that people that were infected with COVID-19 were asymptomatic. So they had the infection, but they didn't know it. Actually, Mitzi, this will be of great interest to you, because these were all emergency service workers. So these were doctors and nurses, EMTs that were working in the hospital with COVID-19 patients. And notably, it was in New York, which was one of the hardest hit areas in the country. And they got infected, totally asymptomatic. And even though it was a small study, we hit statistical significance. So what I would recommend for anyone that's concerned about COVID-19, first of all, you have to really look at the CDC's own numbers, right? So CDC is saying for people under the age of 70, there's a 99.997% chance that you'll survive. CDC also came out and said that only 6% of the people that got infected died from COVID-19. Every other case, the other 94%, were people that had something else, right? So they could have been asthmatic, diabetic. There was a complicating factor. So I don't want to get into the motivations behind this because we're going to be here for a long time if we do that. But you know, that all said, people with pre-existing health conditions should be concerned. But on the other hand, if you're generally healthy, the odds of dying from COVID-19 are less than dying from other things. Yeah, I think you have a greater risk of dying when you get into an automobile. But that all said, and I have covered this on other webinars, there are very powerful natural antivirals. For example, if you go to the FDA's own website, they show a study on the use of vitamin C and copper as a very powerful antiviral combination, eradicating over 99% of viral activity in the body within minutes. This is something that we've tested and we found to be true. Molecular iodine. You know, I often wonder, why is it that in Japan, I haven't seen the recent numbers, but historically, it's something like only 1 out of 10,000 people in Japan get a viral infection. Well, you look, their diet is very high in sea vegetables, in seaweed. Seaweed contains copper and iodine, and both of them are extraordinarily powerful natural antivirals. So a good regimen, which I use to protect myself, is vitamin C, copper, and iodine. There's other things that you can take as well, but that's very, very powerful, effective, and extremely inexpensive. So I would suggest anyone concerned about COVID to do that. With regarding stress, just to put it simply, of course, we've got our Nirvana system, we've got Eon. There's any number of natural amino acids like taurine and theanine, which help to relax and calm the body. There's infrared therapy, or just take a hot bath with magnesium salts. There's any number of natural ways to de-stress.
Oh, okay. That's a lot. But how about if I ask it this way? We know you're still traveling. So what's your personal protocol to protect yourself?
Okay. My protocol, well, I'll have to, you know, I believe in answering things honestly, so you put me up against the wall a little bit. My protocol changes over time depending on what patches I might be experimenting with. So I always use X39 on the back of the neck. That rarely changes. Occasionally I'll put it below the belly button, but daily I've got it on behind the neck. Prior to some of my new work, I would be applying carnosine daily below the belly button. However, I have an experimental patch that I'm using below the belly button. I also have an experimental patch on my left wrist. That's a different patch than the one below my belly button. So I have two experimentals that I'm wearing now. Both of them have made it through clinical studies successfully. So we understand at this point what they do and why. And I'll also wear 1 or 2 sets of energy patches still. And I do apply those at different acupuncture points. At night, I'll use the Eon patch. And on the weekends, I'll, like on a Sunday, I'll use the glutathione patches for a detox. You know, you do get mild increases in glutathione with the use of Eon, with the use of X39. So I do have that daily as a maintenance, but for a heavier detox. And I do practice intermittent fasting, which is detox in and of itself. But I'll use glutathione on Sunday. So that, generally speaking, that's my protocol.
Thank you for that. There's a couple of questions in there about the ingredients and the type of crystals. Can you just say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically what I found was that you could use natural materials like amino acids and sugars, put them into water-based solutions, and they get processed in a specific way so they will reflect very specific wavelengths of light. So when we look at light therapy, typically you'll have, let's say, infrared LEDs at 780 nanometers around in the near infrared, far infrared band that are going to produce different types of physiological responses. And you can also have light in the, let's say, the orange band, 660 nanometers, and these are going to be used, let's say, for elevating collagen synthesis. So typically when scientists want to evaluate the effects of light on the body, they'll pick very specific wavelengths. So what we've done is so considerably different. When you have a light source, like from a lamp, you can just think of this as white noise, meaning you're stimulating the skin with energy, but there's no information there. In laser communications, you get a high frequency carrier wave and then you modulate it with information. So this occurs the same with radio, but in the radio wave band. So what I figured out how to do is use a blend of different wavelengths of light that were encoded with information to activate different biochemical processes within the body. So now if we want to elevate glutathione, we simply use the device to talk to the cell and say, hey, elevate glutathione. And it does this by blending different wavelengths of light.
All right. I was reading the questions, and there's a few questions about how many patches can they wear, and what does it mean if the patch falls off before 12 hours?
Oh, well, yeah. So if the patch falls off before 12 hours, it probably means you don't need to be wearing the patch there. The body has its own feedback mechanisms. And interestingly, sometimes the body will just pop the patch off by building up some water underneath it. Other times the body will react by the skin will get itchy when it gets overstimulated. So this is feedback mechanisms. They're very well understood in acupuncture. But essentially, person should listen to their body and probably not stimulate that point. With respect to how many patches, I'm probably going to have some disagreements with Roy on this. And since he is a patching expert, I don't want to challenge him too much since he is very successful. But you know, if you are using patches to help relieve pain, then the rules are a little bit different than general health. So if your goal is to maintain and improve your health, one of each of the patches is enough. So one X39, one carnosine below the belly button, one set of energy patches, that protocol is good. Now, if someone is suffering with an illness and they want to use the patches for pain management, then things change. Let's say you were working with someone that had Parkinson's disease, and we're not treating the disease, we're not making that claim, we're just simply saying we want to help to manage their pain and inflammation. You might put one set of IceWave patches on the bottom of the feet, put a glutathione patch under or over the belly button, put another set of IceWave on the upper torso, maybe on top of the shoulders. You might have an Eon patch or X39 behind the neck. But the whole idea here is that when you have someone with a chronic health condition like Parkinson's, the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system is not going to be working the same way as someone that's healthy. And so we've got to kickstart the nervous system and the meridians, and we can accomplish this by applying more sets of patches. And there are, you know, of course, different protocols and different ways of doing it.
All right. So what about someone who's already allergic to adhesives? I'm one of them. So I found ways how to use the patches even on my clothing, and it does work. But I think they want to hear it from you that if they have a skin reaction, if the patch is on their skin too long, and what would you also say if they've been using the patches for 4 weeks or more and they don't seem to notice any result?
Okay, so the first thing is 1 in 10,000 people are going to get an allergic response. Sorry, that's you. And this is because we use a 3M hypoallergenic adhesive. So we know that's the numbers. And as you said, you can apply them to the clothing, the inside or the outside of the clothing. I'd recommend the inside of the clothing because then the patch is closer to the skin and it's going to work a little bit better than placing it on top. So now that's a little bit different though than if someone has the patch on for, let's say, 20 or 30 hours and now the skin is becoming itchy. That's really more of overstimulation at that point, and it's probably a heat rash, and you should remove the patch and not apply a patch there until it has had time to recover. When people have used the product, let's say for a month, and they're not seeing any type of results, there could be any number of different things that are going on there. I know that sometimes people say, well, I've got this old injury and I was really hoping that the product would help repair the injury. There may be something else that's going on. In other words, the body has a way of prioritizing what gets healed first. And this has to do with levels of inflammation at an injury site. Of course, someone can return the product for a refund if they find that it doesn't work for them. But I would, if someone wanted to continue, I would definitely look at diet and especially hydration. Many people that don't respond, it's because they're dehydrated.
All right. Thank
and
you.
I got about 2 more minutes. How about that?
Okay, then. So, well, here's the big question. Give us a glimpse in the future of LifeWave. We have a lot of guests today. So it would be, where is LifeWave now? What's the next country? And what's the next invention?
Oh, brother. All right. Well, I think I mentioned that at the very beginning. So first, we'll deal with the products first. X39 is the beginning of our stem cell story. It's not the end. We've had incredibly great success over the past year, forging into new territory. So the way I would look at this is that for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to continue on and tell and build the stem cell story. There's a lot more areas to explore. And our research, we're looking at ways to target stem cell activity in different regions of the body. So for example, if you are looking for optimum brain health, you might want to look at how can we target different stem cell activity in the brain. If you're an athlete and you want to target stem cells in the muscle for greater recovery, we might want to be interested in that and other things. So we're looking at very specific applications of stem cells. X39 is always going to be, the mother product. It will always be the one that you'll want to use for the entire body, but there's going to be ways that we can enhance stem cell activity in very specific ways. So I'm really excited about that research and what it means. Looking out even more to the future, my ultimate goal is on age reversal. I'd like to be 30 forever like Superman. So the question is it possible? And I would say emphatically yes, based on quite a few different things. But I would say out into the future, we want to continue to introduce products that chip away at this problem of aging and restore youth. And X39 is a big step in that direction because it is such a powerful gene modulator. Now, in the business area of what it is that we do, we have an office now in the Philippines this year. We just hired a manager in the Philippines. And so we're really, really excited about that. And sales in the Philippines are going great now. Of course, you know, we've had a presence in Asia, in Taiwan. Incredible story in Taiwan, by the way. In 2019, like the rest of the company, sales in Taiwan were triple of 2018. And this year, Taiwan sales again are coming in at triple of 2019. So the leadership and the members there are just doing a phenomenal job. Japan has been an extraordinary success story. We have one office in Japan now, and we're actually already outgrew that office. We're moving to a larger office and taking on a second office in Japan. So we're doing really great there. Malaysia, we've located an office. We're hoping to have it open by the end of the year, but because of COVID, the government has had all kinds of delays. So maybe by December or January, we'll have an office open in Malaysia, and we'll do our grand opening in Malaysia. Other areas in Asia, we're going to be looking at maybe next year on opening up South Korea. I know we want to get Vietnam open. We don't have a target on that as far as a date goes, so don't go signing people up yet in Vietnam or South Korea. Thailand's another one. We've begun our product registration this year in Thailand, and again, because of COVID, we had an extraordinary number of delays. We had hoped to be open in Thailand this year, but that's just not going to happen because of COVID. We're also been engaging in product registration in South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, and again, that's coming along, but it's always so difficult to predict what's going to happen there because of some of these government shutdowns. So, you know, basically the LifeWave opportunity globally continues to expand. We have very, very healthy markets here in the US and in Europe and in Asia. Mexico, of course, where Lorenzo builds. He's been doing a phenomenal job there, and we're still only tapping into a fraction of the potential there. So, yeah, globally, we continue our expansion, and it's been pretty awesome.
Wow. Well, David, thank you so much for your time and always being so supportive. Everyone, we will answer your questions. We are letting David go. When I reached out to David a month ago, the purpose was really to gather our tribe and let others in on our secret, what we get to do, what we get to have fun, and while enjoying our health and paying it forward. So everybody, it's something to earn a paycheck. It's another to earn it while being fulfilled. So thank you, David, for making that possible.
Well, Mitzi, thank you for having me. And you know, I wish we could be all together. I love getting together at events with your team, and just want to thank everyone that's here just for being great leaders and for organizing this today. It's been awesome. And so definitely looking forward to the day when we can be back together in person.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye, David.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great job.